Well, listen, I'm so happy we're doing this. Obviously, just to kind of reset, and what we're trying to do is for the entire month of April, Sunday through Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, we are going to have all four different people here every single night. We're going to talk about different issues. We got three awesome topics tonight, and I think it's so important that we did this. And I got the idea like over the last 2 or 3 days. This thing just happened to it developed so fast because Misha, kind of Allison, and there was one more person we did a live with, and like just the feedback was so incredible, and I was like, you know what, this needs to happen more, like, because there's so many incredible, I'm new to this entire, honestly, the conservative social media thing, but I like kind of found all of you guys online over the last 2 months, and I'm like your guys' biggest fans, and so I'm like, imagine if we could bring all of these people together on the same platform, and everyone can share their voice, hear their opinion, because you don't hear that enough, and we're not like, it does feel like we're all kind of siloed a little bit, and I'm like, I think that obviously we can bring all of us together, we can voice our opinions on real current issues that's going on in our culture today. I think it's even more powerful when there's that collaboration. So that's what we're gonna be doing. I'm so pumped that you guys are kicking it off, because I love all of you guys. I met Anthony about a couple months ago at CPAC. I've watched
a couple months ago, bro. It was 2 weeks. You forgot about me already?
It's only been two. It has been 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay, a little over about
a month, like a month. Yeah.
So the end of February. Okay,
right.
All right.
I know.
Okay, that one. I was like, was this a couple weeks ago?
Oh, that was a fun weekend. So.
Yeah, man.
But okay, so tonight, I'm gonna have all you guys intro your guys selves, because I don't know if my people know your people and vice versa. So you guys give me like quick 30 seconds, and then we're gonna hit three major issues, and throughout when we talk about these three topics, we'll get more into your guys' story, and the details of it, because I'm sure your story is going to reflect your guys' values and what we're talking about. So Anthony, if you want to start, just give a quick intro, and then we'll get this thing going.
Well, what's up, everybody, and all of my other amazing co-hosts. My name is Anthony Watson, 2018 Winter Olympian, struggling athlete, trying to make it to another Olympics, and conservative and proud of it.
Love it. Shekinah.
Glory. Sorry.
And I basically decided to go on social media and start sharing my values, and Candace happened to comment, and it brought me to the White House, and I just kind of exploded that way. And it's just been a crazy ride the past 4 years, but yeah, so now I'm an influencer, and I have lots of fun plans coming up with Candace Owens' Blexit organization, so I'm really excited about it.
I'm such a big fan, but Blexit is incredible. Like, what you guys are doing over there is just awesome. So good for you. Last but not least.
All right, what's going on, everyone? My name is Kongmin. I'm 24 years old. I know I look like a lot of people think I'm 18, but I am a working man. Yeah, I just started to speak out back when BLM started, with like the whole craziness with George Floyd, and I was like, y'all being lied to, guys, please wake up. And then from there, I started to just speak out more, make some content, and here I am. So it's been super cool, and it's been really fun. Got canceled by a bunch of my friends because I went to school in LA. And most of my Asian friends hate me because most Asians are woke now, my age. But, you got to stand for truth, you know what I'm saying? And I'm conservative because I'm Christian, because Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and he's first and foremost. And that makes me politically conservative.
That's so good. Awesome. Yeah. Well, great intro. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over three topics tonight, and we're going to start with, obviously, Kongmin, because, and, I kind of, like, what has been happening, I mean, what's happening now is nothing new. Like, it's nothing new. It started a couple of years ago with BLM, Black Lives Matter, and we saw how it got politicized, and we're going to talk about later on. I'm sure we'll get into what's going on with George Floyd, because obviously that is a big thing that's going on today, throughout this, and it's going to be going on for a while. But, Kongmin, I saw your videos. I mean, the last couple of weeks, you've just been absolutely on fire. Like, I had already followed you, but then like out of nowhere, this dude just starts dropping heat, and like it's one thing, like it's so funny. There's no denying the stats and facts that you pulled from the government, and how you basically just destroyed every single argument about Asian hate, and that's what I really want to talk about is this perception that all the Asian hate that is happening right now, the way the media has twisted it, everything that is basically Asian hate a white supremacy issue, and what are the lies in between. And so obviously we had the Atlanta shooting that happened that started this entire thing off, and we had, I believe it was a horrible tragedy. I believe 8 people passed away, 6 were Asian, 2 were white. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. And then we had, obviously that was the media trigger. That's what triggered the media. It was like, oh my gosh, we got a white person. We can finally flip this entire thing on and create this narrative to get an entire another race on the left and get this woke ideology. Then we, a couple days later, Boulder, and we see obviously the comparison. So I want to know, Congman, like what inspired you, and obviously kind of break down the differences of Atlanta, Boulder. You also had Virginia Beach 2 days later, and the media didn't talk about that either. And that was another mass shooting 2 or 3 days after the Boulder one. So take it away, man.
Yeah, so it's really funny because I was talking to some of my friends about this. I was like, man, there's going to be a time where the left tries to use Asians like they did with black people with BLM just to get them all riled up and pin them against white people with this stupid white supremacy narrative. And literally a month later, now there's this whole stop Asian hate, Asian lives matter thing. And I'm like, wow, like I maybe I have the gift of prophecy or something, praise the Lord. But yeah, I'm just so tired of it. And here's the thing. So I'm Korean. I'm a super proud Korean. I was born in Korea and I was raised very Korean. I only speak Korean in my household. And so when the Atlanta shooting happened, and I'm actually moving out to Atlanta in a month, I was sad. I was like, what the heck? That's not okay. Let's grieve for the families and the victims. But what was happening was, and 4 of them were Korean. So, I'm like, okay, like I have a huge attachment to my Korean heritage and my culture. But what was happening was you see all these media headlines and they're saying Atlanta shooting, 8 people died, 6 were Asian. Therefore, white supremacy. And then you had all these leftist pundits and these media activists and all these insufferable leftists saying, oh, white terrorism, whiteness is terrorism, white supremacy is terrorism. We need white people are so guilty of all these things. And I'm like taking a step back and like, what about the 2 victims who just slaughtered just now from the psychopath who decided to shoot up these massage parlors? What about the victims of those families? How do you think they feel when the entirety of the internet is shoving down your throat that whiteness is terrorism? Like, how do you think they feel? And Christians were all over this. And I'm just standing there thinking, you guys are completely blind. And just because a white person killed majority Asian people does not make it some sort of racial hate crime and does not make white supremacy the motivating factor. And what they did was they took this event, like you said, it was like the catalyst for this woke Asian, Asian Lives Matter thing. But they've been completely ignoring the past year of Asians talking about, hey, like, there's a spike in Asian hate crimes. Like, I mean, there's kind of something going on. And for me, I'm like, okay, like, I think it's a little overblown. Like, yeah, Asians are being targeted, but everyone's being targeted. Like, crime is going up in all cities. And then so I was just looking at it, and they're saying because this Atlanta shooting happened and there's a spike in Asian hate crimes, therefore white supremacy, Trump conservatives, and Republicans, and anyone who is right of Ruth Bader Ginsburg is the problem. They're saying this nonsense that they're the problem. The China virus, they're cultivating this thing. And I'm like, are you guys blind? When E. Lee was raped, brutally tortured by 11 black teenagers back in Milwaukee in September of 2020.
Come on, bro.
Was that fueled by white supremacy? No, absolutely not. When Victor Ratchanapakdi was shoved to the ground and killed by a black teenager, was that fueled by white supremacy? No. And then you see these leftists saying, I tweeted about this today, they're saying, yeah, but it's because black people and Asians were pitted against each other by white supremacists and they're victims of a system. I'm like, Well, if you're saying that people and minorities do not have personal agency, they're not responsible for their own actions, and they can't take any actions apart from what white supremacists tell them to, you are the white supremacist because you're saying that minorities, apart from their white supremacist masters, can't make decisions for themselves. And so this is the narrative that's been caused, and these people are the white supremacists. These leftists are the racists. And I'm trying to show people this. I'm like, man, guys, wake up. Like, this is not a white supremacy problem. And I know I'm ranting, but
no, that's exactly what we need here. So why do you, I mean, let's just open up the discussion. Why do you guys think it's so hard? You know, it's funny, me and my sister, we literally talked about this today, because me and my sister, we see a little bit different politically. I mean, not too much, just in a couple different issues. And, you know, she actually saw your video, and she actually texted me, and she was like, that Asian dude that you just posted on your story, like, holy crap, that just opened up my eyes. And I was like, and I didn't know exactly what she was talking about at first, because it was actually really early in the morning. And then, you know, she called me today, and she's like, hey, I actually talked to some of my liberal left friends at work, and, you know, I had this discussion and showed them the video, and their initial reaction, they would not, like, doesn't matter about the facts. They would not receive it. They didn't believe it. They're like, no, it's still white supremacy because it was a white guy, you know. And eventually, when they started listening to her, and it's funny, because this is the point where I'm getting to, is that Alexi was like, for some reason, when it comes from a conservative, you know, sometimes I guess conservatives, and this is what I want to ask you guys, conservatives care just only about facts and not emotion. Where people on the left, they need this emotional connection before the facts to even be able to hear you out in the first place. So, like, why do you think that, you know, a person on the right or person in the middle hears that, like, oh yeah, that is not white supremacy. There was a way bigger issue at hand, where someone on the left will hear it and it just goes right over their head. Why do you think we have this issue? Like, what? Wake up! Why?
I mean, it's really simple. It's like nobody knows any of the history behind anything. Nobody reads anymore. Nobody educates themselves. People want fast facts. People want facts that at your fingertips. People don't go through the process of learning everything, you know, because before Black Lives Matter, you remember it was the indigenous people. Then after the indigenous people, you forgot when the Jews, after that Jewish synagogue shooting, and then everyone was sympathetic, and then everything was anti-Semitic for a little bit. Then BLM really kicked off, and now we're Asians. So essentially, the left is kind of catching up to where we are, because they're going group by group when something finally that they can't ignore anymore makes them finally admit to it. And we're not saying that differences of opinions are wrong, because that's what makes us Americans. That's the beauty of living here, is that you can have a different opinion, and you can think a certain way, and you can think however you want. That's the beauty of being here. You're not criminalized or punished for it. Where we as conservatives have an issue is we don't like it when other people that won't even have a conversation to hear our point of view try to tell us that our way of thinking is wrong, and then try to force us to change. Right. That's where we draw the line. And so we're always ready to toe the line, to have a conversation about it, to be like, okay, well, let me hear what you're doing. But then the minute you disagree in the smallest way, then it becomes, you know, you're a racist, you're a homophobe. I mean, like, I was having conversations about like sports, and because I disagreed with like someone's political stance, I was automatically deemed a homophobic. I was like, we weren't even talking about gay people. I'm just like, that's just like the thing that kind of makes people with no spine or backbone or facts, you know, kind of buckle under pressure, because now everyone's trying to apologize for something that they're not. But I know that I don't live for people's opinions. You know, you chase people's opinions, you're going to be chasing the wind. They'll blow you one direction, blow the other direction, and you'll always be left out of breath and tired and exhausted because you can't do that. It finally takes a situation, whatever that may be, for you to finally wake up. One day I just woke up a couple years ago. I drank a big glass of Screw It, and I just stopped caring about what people thought about me, and I started living my life, you know? And I tell people, when opinions don't make sense, when my facts don't match up to how you feel, you know, when my theories and my ideologies, I can't explain them well, I say, look at my life. You know, I'm someone that lives a life dedicated to Jesus Christ. Now, I haven't been perfect with it, you know, but I don't walk around in a victim mentality, because anyone that truly believes who Jesus Christ says he is knows that in every situation, you know, like, there is an answer for it. Now, Jesus doesn't make it bulletproof, because the same world that he calls us to endure is the same world that put him on the cross, you know,
Good,
and
Anthony.
stuff. But every single person, saved and unsaved, it's not black or white, it's not Asian, Hispanic, it's saved or lost, you know, and truth is truth. And you can bury truth, you can run away from truth, you can ignore truth, but truth is never going to go away.
And it will set you free.
And it will, you know. And so, but there's a way to say things and there's a way to do things. And, you know, when we as conservatives take the defensive side, it's almost like we're gearing up for a fight when it doesn't even need to be that way. You know, the Bible says that, you know, if someone's pulling you down, cut them loose and walk away. And it's like both sides are so convinced to try convince the other one that I feel like that's where we get caught up in all of these battles. You know, it's just like, look, speak your piece. But at the end of the day, it's just like, once you open your mouth and say something, you got eyes on you to see if you're actually going to be living what you're talking about. And that's where we start to lose it, is because we get caught up. But at the end of the day, we're still human. But we take responsibility. The left always wants to blame everybody else for the reasons that they can't explain to make them who they are. You know, and the minute in today's world, the minute you apologize, you're already guilty, and then people pile more guilt on top of you to cancel you. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm like, if I'm going to be canceled, if I have my social media, my verification, my Olympics stripped from me, you know what? I'll still have Jesus. That's really all I need. You know, the difference between us and the world is the world tries to help you meditate, do all this other stuff to get you comfortable in your mess, to get you comfortable staying where you are. You know, Jesus calls you out of that, and he calls you to endure that, because we're anxious and ready for what's to come. That's the difference. The world, they want to stay here. We want to leave, you know? So while we're here, we want to give the best example of where we're headed. And, you know, I feel like that's how you change that whole mentality right there.
Man, it's good. Shekinah, what you thinking?
Glory.
Glory.
I'm sorry.
Glory.
You got me on that.
Well, I think that our educational institutions, the media, and social media in general, so like the tech world, like technology and all of these things, I think they're a giant apparatus that work together to emotionalize the American population. They use it to distract people from the truth. And so, for example, one of my cousins, or I guess one of my family members in college, she was taught that regardless of the facts, it doesn't matter. Your feelings are what are more important. This is in a history class where it was like, you were talking about the facts of what actually happened. She said, but it's about the feelings. So I'm just going to change the whole story because it's about your feelings and how you feel. And that's really what all of this is about, is America has become so sensitive. We've become so sensitive. And I think that's because of a lot of brainwashing that goes on within this apparatus. So we have a lot of people that have woken up to that reality and they're understanding the truth. And we have people that are choosing to be emotional. But quite honestly, I think it's being taught in a lot of ways. This emotional side of people that we see a lot more now, it's being taught. It's being taught by professors. It's being taught in our educational institutions. They're literally telling us to go and be emotional in the streets and protest these things. They're capitalizing off of emotions. This is what happened with Asian Lives Matter, and Black Lives Matter. The fact that they use language like white supremacy when they specifically said that Black and Asian lives, white people are trying to pit them against each other as minorities. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I mean, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard, because Asians are the most successful people in this country, without a doubt, without question. Asians are the most successful people in this country, and Black people are just not. We're not. We're the perpetrators of this mess, of a lot like with single parenthood and all these different things. We really are the perpetrators of a lot of these issues. And so to try to make this it's not a race issue, it's a good and evil issue. And I think the biggest problem is people don't realize that this isn't about race, this is about good and evil. And I think the devil has used emotions and used like this propaganda to pit people against each other. And race is such a huge discussion in this country. And I think that's why the Asian Lives Matter was such an easy thing to cling on to, is because it's easy to be emotional about that. It's easy to use dead people to be emotional about things that don't represent the full scope of what's going on. And so I think that, again, it's a giant apparatus in this country that's trying to brainwash people, and a lot of people take the bait. But that's why we're here, because we're bringing truth to people, and we're trying to actually share what's true and what's actually reality. And I think that's why God has called so many of us as influencers to do that. So
what do you guys think is the common thread? Like, for instance, you have Anthony and Shekinah. You guys are both Black, but you have a completely different mindset than what the left would say. Or you have Kongman, that same exact thing, where you're Asian, these attacks are happening to your people. Why are you not pissed off, and why are you not blaming white? Like, what is the common thread between all this, that you guys have a different outlook and a different perspective than what the media and culture is saying?
Well, first of all, I don't consider myself Black. I just have a slightly better tan than the world. Let's just get that straight, But I mean, like, social media and the media is the that's the biggest thing right now. I think that's the biggest, like, crutch in learning and figuring things out. Plus, like, other character issues come up with it, like lack of courage, and then like there always has to come the intricacies of like what makes someone like afraid or anything like that. Look, we all face it, but for me it's common sense. I mean, like, I can't sit here and look, I don't support the organization BLM, but it's just like, I grew up in the ghetto. I grew up in a lot of places and been around a lot of places where like, most people today, if you were white walking in there, bad things would happen just because of the color of your skin.
Right.
And so
but what I want to get is, like, okay, but you grew up in the ghetto, which so did, like, but why? What happened that turned the light switch on for you, that you just thought differently? There was something that had to happen that caused you to think differently.
Well, man, I mean, it's the love of Christ that I have in my heart for people, and it's just like, you can't explain that any other way, because it's just like, I was a Christian before I was a conservative, but because conservatism came out like not that long ago, the term for it, before that it was Republican, Democrat, then, like libertarian, independent, that kind of thing. But, like, when you look at the values of conservative, it's all based off of what God designed already, like law and order, like the preservation of life, free thought and freedom, that kind of thing, and they all exist in a space for you to express and become who you want to be. But, like, not so much that. So there was never a moment where it was just like, oh, it was like, I guess, like, this is terrible and I've been thinking the wrong way. It's just like, I was raised, a lot of people grow up. I was raised. I had parents that instilled things in me that make me see the world the way that I do now. And I understand that, like, what makes the world important and beautiful is people, and if you're a Christian who has a little prejudice in your heart, you got to examine yourself to see if you're really a Christian. Good. Because Jesus didn't come for some people. He came and he died for everybody. We're celebrating Easter this weekend, and it's just like, it's a reminder that, like, none of us know when the end is. And so rather than arguing about it, like, and trying to, like, find agreement on issues, there are people that you're not even going to agree with. The disciples didn't agree with each other all the time,
Come on.
And it's just like, there were arguments amongst Paul and Peter after Jesus was dead that caused them to have ministries in separate directions. There's going to be discourse here.
Well, not only that, Jesus was the most offensive person that ever walked on planet Earth. I think we talked about this the other day on one of our Instagram lives, where, like, a lot of people are like, that's offensive, and that's one thing that, the facts sometimes do. Well,
Jesus had something that a lot of people lack today, outside of being spirit-filled and being God in human flesh. He had zeal. And it's just like, zeal is the undying passion for what's right. And so whenever he confronted anybody, it was always with the scripture. It was always with knowing his intent, and then outstepping and outwitting people, with his knowledge. And that's the kind of stuff that he gives available to us in an open relationship that we can have with him at any time, And so, like I said, it's just like, he even said it himself. He said, my people perish for a lack of knowledge, and
Right.
People don't know. And that's why you see a lot of mayhem happening everywhere, because people go off of what the herd is doing. And it's just like, the Bible says, it's just like, wide is the gate,
Come on.
Wide is the way that leads to destruction, and many are on it. And he says, but the road that leads to life is narrow, and very few find it. It's something that you have to work on daily. But it's something that also brings into perspective that it's like you can't really plan for your future because God doesn't promise us tomorrow, which is why every day should be a day for us to rejoice in every kind of situation when we realize that where we are right now is a gift. We're on borrowed time. And it's just like you look around everywhere, it's just like everyone is getting so outrageous and like irate with all the stuff that's happening, but they're not realizing that it's just like everyone's playing with time that they're borrowing, and it's just like once you lose it, you can't get it back.
Yeah, it's so true. That's good. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, so I was adopted by a white family, so I feel like I have a totally different perspective on race. And that's partially why I think I ended up conservative. And I also just think I was raised totally differently. Like, racism was never a discussion in my house. Like, that wasn't a point of discussion. My mom didn't come up to me when I was little and say, Shekinah, before you go to school, I just want you to know that people are going to hate you for the color of your skin, and you need to feel bad about yourself, and you need to feel like a victim, and you just need to know that people are going to hate you. And if they touch your hair, that's racist. That's a microaggression. All these stupid things that don't matter, like, that was never impressed upon me. So I had friends of all races. I was the first Black person to graduate from my high school. I've been to 20 different countries. So I feel like my perspective was just entirely different. And when I went into college and I saw how the Black community acted, like, because I went to Illinois for school, and I went to Olivet Nazarene University on a scholarship to play pipe organ, piano, and trumpet. And when I went to college, and like, I've always been very successful, very driven. I've done well. I did well in school. I did well playing instruments. I did well with everything that I did. So when I went into college, that's what I did. And the mentality that a lot of people have, like, when I stepped into it and the Black community was like coming at me for being a conservative, they were saying I was being brainwashed by my white family members. They were saying that because I spoke educated, I was acting white. Because I didn't dress a certain way, I was acting white. All of these things. And I think that's really what ticked me off and made me become a conservative. And not only that, it made me change my major and decide to pursue being a social media influencer in terms of politics full time, because I was like, this is the most racist insanity that people are just indoctrinating into their children, that they're learning in college. And I think that's the number one reason why I have a completely different mentality and why I chose to become conservative, because I saw just so many different things that I didn't have to experience. Like, I grew up in a really, really successful household. I didn't experience the dysfunction, and I feel like I saw the issues that a lot of people have struggled with, and it's caused them to become a leftist. And I think that's just really what got me into being a conservative.
It's so powerful. The scripture, train up a child in the way he should go, and he will never depart from it. And it's like, could you imagine you trained your kid before a basketball game, their high school basketball game, or the middle, and they're like, hey, listen, there's guys out there, they're bigger, they're stronger, they're better than you. You're probably going to suck, and you're going to do a horrible job on the basketball court. You're going to miss a lot of shots, and people are probably going to laugh at you, but have a good game. Instead of the perspective of, hey, son, listen, you're going to kick ass today. You're going to get on the basketball court. You're going to own it. You're going to be aggressive. You're going to be confident. You are imagine you have the same kid. You have two kids, identical, two twins, identical. One parent says one thing and the other parent says the other. They both go on the basketball court. I guarantee you, the one that had life spoke into them, they will be a completely different player than the one that walked on the court already defeated. And I think that's where, even conservatives, they talk about parent privilege in a sense where it's like, if you have two parents in the household, but then if they speak life into you and they speak against the lies that are our race or our generation or our culture or our media or whatever the hell, whatever the lies are, we speak against and we push back against those lies and speak truth and encouragement and life over them. I guarantee you would have this is why you have a Shekinah, an Anthony, and a Congman. That is what ends up happening in the long run, because you have people that are walking with authority and confidence and not in a victim mindset.
Right.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I remember, so I'm not the most macho guy, right? But like growing up, I was pretty like, oh, all up in my feels, especially when I was going through puberty. And there's one time, I think it was like middle school or high school, I was like to my mom, I was like, Mom, I'm alone. I started break down crying in the car. She's like, what is wrong with you? Why are you crying? And I was like, Mom, like, I'm so lonely. And she's like, why are you lonely? I was like, I have no friends. And she was like, then why don't you just go make friends? And then I was like crying and I stopped crying and I was like, wait, you're right. You know? And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And here's the thing, what the left does, they keep emasculating men. And that's what they do. A lot of what they're doing right now is attack on the nuclear family, because when you break apart the nuclear family, you can control them, right? Because so many problems occur from it: crime, poverty, loneliness, lack of purpose. All these things stem from a lack of loving parents who raise you up in good values and virtue. But I remember I was like, I thought about that, and that's a very formative like moment in my life, because it's like I didn't need to be pandered to be like, oh, you poor you're so lonely. Here, let me help you find friends. My mom was like, just go make friends then. Like, go and, like, stop crying, stop being a wussy, just go and make friends. And I'm like, wow, thank you, Mom. Like, I needed that. And I think as men especially, like, we need this. But now you got men going like, oh, like, my life is so hard. Like, I have to work. It's like, oh my gosh, I just want to like plop you in the middle of Afghanistan, or plop you in the middle of like Normandy, and just see how you react when you're trying to storm the beaches of Normandy. Because here's the thing, a lot of people lack gratitude, and a lot of people don't know this, but it's like we live in such a great time where we don't have to farm for our food. We can just literally go to a grocery store 5 minutes away and pick off whatever grocery, whatever food that we want. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy for now. But we live in such a good time, so people are so spoiled. And I talked about this in one of my YouTube videos recently when I was talking about Meghan Markle. And it's like, I was thinking about this, like, why do rich people victimize themselves? Why are they so desperate to grovel to become a victim? This is what we saw with Asians with the Stop Asian Hate, where they're like, oh, I'm such a victim of racism. And I was thinking about it, it's because we have it so good in this country. Yeah. We are living in such a great time where we all intrinsically want to fight for something as people. And we all have a desire to fight for something. And this is a desire that God has placed on our hearts. But if you don't have anything to fight for, if you're not living a missional life, and you don't have Jesus to anchor you, and so you don't have the great commandments to live out and the great commission to fulfill, then you're going to create something for yourself. And you're like, okay, well, let's see. Everyone's telling me that I'm a victim. Everyone's telling me that all these corporations and the whole system's out to get me and hurt me, when they're actually all on my side. But we're just going to ignore that fact that they're all on my side. But this system is here to oppress me. Well, they're going to convince themselves of that. Literally. And then this is where the mental instability and a lot of the depression comes from. And so this is what happens. And this is a lot of the problems that we see in this country. And this can all be solved. Again, I think this really just comes back to Jesus. And this comes back to Christ. Because it's like a lot of these people, I mean, there's obviously a few exceptions where you can just like hammer some sense into them. But for most of these people, they're so far off gone. And they're so, Satan has deceived them so much. And they're so deeply entrenched into their victimhood mentality that the only thing powerful enough to bring them out of that is Jesus. The only thing that will give them hope, peace, life, and joy, gratitude, right? All the fruits of the Spirit, is Jesus. And this is where as a Christian and as a conservative, I think for me, I've been kind of shifting my focus a little bit these days to kind of, I'm still like destroying the left with facts and logic, right? But it's, I think ultimately after we debunk those lies, it's like, okay, but what is there to fill that void? After we've debunked and after we've proven that these are lies, what is there left? What is there to fill that void is Jesus. And it'll always be Jesus. And like, he is the best thing that has ever happened to my life and your life, right? It's like I was living in a dumpster, eating trash, and I thought that was the best thing for me. But then Jesus invited me to eat at his banquet, and I have a huge just banquet, this buffet, just ready for me every single day because I'm in a relationship with him. Like, why aren't we telling those people who are, eating out of the trash, living worldly lives? It's like, okay, guys, I know that looks great, but we got something so much better in Jesus, and here's the solution. So I think that's That's really it. The solutions to all these problems is Jesus first and foremost.
That is so good. It was yesterday. I walked up to my dad, and it was right when I woke up in the morning, and I just got done like doing my devotion. And like when you start your day off like in the Word, and you start your day with it, like for some reason your day just you're literally getting that fresh man. I walked over to my dad like, Dad, thank you for training me in the ways of the Lord to wake up in the morning, spend time with Jesus, get that fresh manna. Because if my dad and my mom never raised me that way, and we would not be the people that we are today, which is why I think a lot of conservatives always go back to like, it is such a privilege, and it is. I'm blessed, and I will claim the blessing of the privilege that I have two parents that raised me to love Jesus, to think for yourself, to be a free think. It really is, and I'm thank God every single day for that blessing. Because I mean, I don't know where we wouldn't be who we are today if it wasn't for our faith, and we probably wouldn't have got that faith from our parents. So man, gosh, it feels like we should have had this on Sunday.
Jesus.
Well, that kind of leads to, we didn't finish everything I wanted to go over when it comes to that. When it comes to that topic, we just kind of went into all of this. Now, before we switch over, because I do really want to talk about what's going on in sports today, because this is Anthony's expertise. You said, Kongman, and I was reading one of your tweets, and you said critical race theory is the same as white supremacy. And you tweeted that, and then you showed, I think right before that, you showed like 5 or 6 back-to-back videos of different scenarios of different scenarios of where there was Asian hate crimes, and it wasn't necessarily white people, to kind of combat that narrative. And then on top of that, you had a video, which was the video that blew my face off, which is when you just hit us with the stats and I believe you got it from the FBI. I can't remember exactly. You got it from a government website. So can you go over those stats real quick? Do you have them with you or no?
Yeah. Let me just go over those stats real quick. I'll break it down real quick. So, ever since the pandemic, they say 3,800 incidents of Asian hate. They're like, oh my gosh, so many instances, right? But if you actually look at the data that they compiled, most of it is verbal harassment and avoidance and shunning. And I think a lot of the avoidance and shunning can be just attributed to the pandemic. Like, it's not because they hate you. It's just they're scared of getting COVID, so they're going to avoid you. But most of it is verbal harassment. Only like 10% is from, well, more specifically, 11.1% is like physical assault. So that still makes up like 400. But
out of all the hate crimes towards Asian people, 90% of them are vocal, and only about 10 or 11% of them are actually physical abuse hate crimes.
So hate crimes is defined as like a violent crime that is racially, ethnically, like gender, whatever, motivated, right? But so a lot of people say 3,800 instances of Asian hate, which also includes like if someone says, "Hey, you chink," it's like Asian hate, and they will like lock it down, right? So I think there's we need to have some sobriety when we're talking about this topic, and then so that's to clear that up. But yeah, Asian hate has spiked like 150% this past year in all these major cities, but also crime in general, violent crime has skyrocketed in all these cities as well, because all these city council members are like, yeah, defund the police because we're going to bow down to the woke mob. So I think there's a lot of factors to consider as well. So I think so it is on the rise, but I think it's overblown for sure to craft the narrative. But I think just to debunk the white supremacy narrative, we don't have the racial breakdowns of all of these violent crimes. And the most recent one we have is from 2018 from the DOJ Bureau of Justice Statistics. But I just want to break it down. So Asians, out of all the Asians who've experienced violent hate or violent crimes, 24.1% of them were from white people, and then 27.5% were from black people. So, the left always likes to say, black people make up 13% of the population, but they're 41% or something of police deaths is black, so therefore it's injustice. Well, let's look at this. Black people only make up 13% of the population. White people make up 60%. But it's like black people are still committing more crimes against Asians than white people. It is not a white supremacy thing. But I think the most interesting thing is when you look at white on Asian violent incidents, so between white and Asian people, white on Asian crime, so white people hurting Asians, is 35.8% of the time, and 64.2% of the time is Asians hurting white people. So there are more every year. There are
Wow.
more Asian people that hurt white people than white people hurt Asians. And this is something that people don't talk about. Like, I recently saw a video that went viral on Twitter today of this one white guy saying like, "Hey, you guys are being deceived. Wake up! They're deceiving you." And this Asian guy comes with this bike and smashes the car window, and I'm like, "Whoa!" Right? And I'm like, dude, these things happen all the time, but the media doesn't cover it because it doesn't fit into their narrative. So they're actually every year there are more white people who are victims of violent crimes from Asians than the other way around. So this idea that we as Asians are victims of white supremacy and we're so beholden to the oogie boogie white man is a complete farce. It's bull crap. It just does not match up with the stats.
Well, stats don't even hit the same hardly much anymore because nobody breaks down what they mean. So everyone can say 60%, 92%, that kind of thing. But like when you think about it from like a ignorant standpoint, it's like you hear more about this happening than you do this. Yeah. And it's just like, you know, so like to break down your stats, Kongman, it's just like you're 35. It's like that's like 3 out of every 5 Asian people will hurt one like white person. You know, right. Statistically speaking, and you know, like 6 out of 10 black people are more common to hurt a white person than the other way around when you like look at stats in a dummy way to right. break it down for people that are like, what?
And it's like also if you look at white and black incidents, like white on black, black on white is 90% versus 10% for white on black. But then if you like black Asian,
hold on, say that. You gotta say that slower, bro. I did not know.
Yeah. So when it's white people versus black people, I guess versus, right? It's white on black crime makes up 90% of it, and then white on black makes up 10%. But here's the thing. I've had black supremacists on Twitter attack me and say, "Oh, but you're just gonna ignore all the instances of Asians hurting black people. Like your people are targeting black people." And I'm like, what? Here's the stats. 99% of black on Asian violent instances are black on Asian, less than 1% on Asian on black. So it's like people don't understand what is actually going on in these communities.
Yeah, that irritates me so much. I hate that. It's like, why I don't understand why the black community does that. Why do we do that? The reality is we're only 13% of the population, okay, and we're committing 52% of murders. That's the reality. That's just a fact. There's nothing. That's just the reality of it. And what is that stemming from? Well, Asians are only 11.5% of the population. Well, they only 11.5% of Asians are born out of wedlock compared to black people at 70% born out of wedlock. That's a shocking difference. So to say that all these things are white supremacy, it's like, that's just not adding up. That just doesn't add up. None of this.
I would say I would argue it is due to white supremacies, but it's come from the left and Democrats. That's what I would say.
Yes, exactly. It's from the Democrats.
That is it's so funny. your video comment about you said, you know, first they said Black Lives Matter, then they said Asian Lives Matter. Now they're saying Hispanic Lives Matter. It's like, so basically what you're all saying is all lives matter.
Dude, I'm about to start a campaign, White Lives Matter, man, because white people are hated way too much these days, man. I love my white people, man.
Yeah,
white people are great. Let me tell you, I've been to the boonies of Wisconsin and Ohio, the most rural parts of America. Let me tell you, white people are the sweetest people ever. And they're going to be like, "Oh, he's such a pick-me." And I'm like, you can call me a pick-me, but at least I live in reality.
Oh my God, that's so true. All right, we're like 45 minutes and we still have 2 more topics to go over. So let's try to, we got to talk about, and we might get a little controversial here because we're about to get into some Shekinah glory. We've had to talk about one of the biggest stories that's going on right now, which is the case George Floyd, and Shekinah went off on her Instagram story today. You said a couple, and I wrote them down. I was like, oh my goodness, she's talking. So, well, first, Shekinah, you want to give your perspective of what's going on with the George Floyd case, because before we get into it, or what are you thinking?
Sure. Well, okay, so here's my problem with the George Floyd case is I think people are just neglecting the facts because they really, really want this to be racially motivated, number one, and they really want this to go in George Floyd's favor. But the reality is George Floyd, first of all, committed a crime which caused someone to call the police, and the police came. That's off the rip. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge, is if he wasn't committing a crime, none of this would have happened. None of this would have conspired. So that's the number one thing. But after that happened, people don't realize that the video footage that we saw was after everything, after the real truth happened. So there's all this video footage that we didn't get out till later that we really should have looked into in the first place before all of the rest of this happened. And the problem is people get too emotionally invested, and the media uses, I really truly believe, and Candace said this, the media uses dead Black people to push a narrative. They really do. And it's sad. It's sad for the families, and it's sad that people are eating it up like that, because it's sad. And there should be privacy, I think, for the George Floyd family and for all of it in the first place. But the reality is all you see is Chauvin with his knee on George Floyd's neck, and he's dead. That's all that you saw, but you see nothing else beforehand. Beforehand, he was resisting arrest. They handcuffed him. They were able to handcuff him and put him in the car. And during this time, he was high. He was high on drugs. And people didn't really want to talk about that at the beginning.
There was 3 different drugs he was high on, correct?
Yes, so fentanyl, meth, and marijuana. He had all those things in his system. When we first came out with this story, no one knew that. They just thought this was a bad procedure on the part of the officer, and that's all that we knew. We didn't know any of these extra things that came out, and all we knew is what we saw from the video. But then after that, George Floyd literally said, "I can't breathe." When he was in the car, he was already in the car, sitting in the car, and he said, "I can't breathe." And so they got him out of the car, and he started resisting, and he said, "Put me on the ground." So then he proceeded to put him on the ground, and he put his knee on his neck, and he eventually passed away. But what people don't understand is now they're running with the story that he died because of cardiac arrest. Because at first they were saying that it was because of the compression on his chest, but then a lot of the reports said that there was no strangulation or sign of injury around his neck area, which is what they were rolling with the first place, because they said his knee was on his neck for however many minutes, and that's how he died. But the report said that there was no damage done around the neck, and there was no sign that he wasn't able to breathe. What people don't realize is fentanyl causes your heart rate to slow down, number one. That's one of the major causes to know. If you want to know if someone's having symptoms of a fentanyl overdose, one of the biggest ones is a slowing down of your heart rate and a lack of being able to breathe. Your breathing slowing down and not being able to breathe, and it being heavy on your chest. And then kind of a lack of consciousness. Those are all major things that are symptoms if you overdose on fentanyl. Well, that's exactly what was happening to George Floyd. He was saying, "I can't breathe" before he was even on the ground.
Wow. I didn't even know that.
And nobody knew that because that's not what the media wanted you to see. They just wanted you to see a Black man dying at the hands of an evil white man. And I genuinely think that if you actually look a little deeper into this case, that's not entirely true. I think that what really happened was he overdosed on drugs. And we have 2 different reports that came out, toxicology reports that came out, and one was from his family that was paid by his family to do, and the other one was a completely different, separate one that was done. And the separate one clearly said that he overdosed on drugs. And we saw the signs of that before he even died. We saw that he already couldn't breathe before they even put him on the ground and all these different things. And we already know that these drugs were already in his system when he committed this crime in the first place. And so that's why I spoke out about this, because I don't think it was racially motivated. I really don't. And we created all this outrage, and we burned down the whole country over something that we didn't have all the facts to, and we didn't even have the full video clip. no one pursued the full video clip because it was easier to use your emotions. And even a lot of conservatives use their emotions. I did too. And I just think that it's way more important to get the full video clip and know exactly what happened and what was wrong with George Floyd and what he did prior to that and what was in his system. All these things bring the truth out. And that's why it's so important to wait till all the facts come out before making claims like this.
We kind of saw that in Boulder, where the media hopped on so fast when they thought it was a white guy, because that one picture it looked like he was white, and then the moment that it came, and that's what I saw. My entire Twitter, everything was just filled with white supremacy, another white guy, mass shooting, da 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 da. And the moment that they found out that he was a Syrian man and he wasn't white, everything was like, we shouldn't talk about the man. We should not bring recognition to his name. And I'm just like, and that is what ended up. Go ahead, Shekinah.
Well, no, but that again is another thing that drove me insane. I'm from Colorado. I know I'm 30 minutes from Boulder. I've lived there my entire life. I go to Boulder all the time. Boulder is like 87% white. It's 7% white, and it's extremely, extremely leftist. Like, it's very, very, very far left because University of Colorado is there. And I just thought it was so funny that after everything happened, it came out that it was a Middle Eastern man that was a jihadist. I just thought that was so funny.
I thought it was hilarious. I don't know if you guys saw this, but after that, a lot of leftists and blue check marks on Twitter were saying, yeah, but his skin was white, so therefore he still got the privileges of being white, right? And then it was so funny because I think Matt Walsh tweeted this saying, "Oh, he's like, well, I guess Jesus was white after all." The funniest thing.
Hey,
because
man,
they were literally
Jesus was
from
the Middle East. Don't forget that, man. He had a tan,
Right. But like the thing is, the blue check marks on Twitter were making the case that Middle Eastern people, light-skinned Middle Eastern people, are, I guess, white adjacent, which is what they labeled Asians the whole past year. But I thought it was hilarious, and we're like, well, it looks like Jesus was white this whole time then.
So funny you say that about they made Asians white, or they refer them to white adjacent, because I remember Blasio in New York, he had like a whole on press conference like 2 years ago why he was saying that the reason why Asian Americans by the family are the richest in America is because they're white adjacent. And then it's the moment that we have 2 minutes. Oh, we gotta go get back on this thing. They just gave me a 2-minute warning to top off here. But yes, well, do you guys want to hop back on? Because we still got to get into sports. You guys,
I'm down. Yeah.
Are you guys good time?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I have a minute and a half. So we are going to hop off here. I'm going to reboot the live, and then we got to talk about patriotism in sports, where Anthony is going to take the floor, and because this dude's got a lot to say. I actually want to know what your thoughts are on Nike. I want to know what you're talking about. The big story to me is you have the border crisis, and then you have Biden. While we have a huge border crisis, Biden's hanging out with the women's soccer team, and they're having "woe is me. I'm not rich enough, even though I'm a millionaire, and I need to get paid."
All right, yeah, we'll cover all that. Well, 1 minute interlude.
All right.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Y'all didn't see nothing.
Didn't see nothing. All right, so we're resetting because we're back. Round 2. We're gonna be hitting on sports. Man, guys, that went by so fast.
Yeah, it did.
Like, I don't know why Instagram limits it to an hour. It's so dumb. But all right, so what we have talked about so far, we have talked about the myth of white supremacy with Asian hate, Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. We got into the stats, and then now we're about to hit on, and we talked about the George Floyd case. I mean, we talked a lot. But
let it just be said.
What did you say?
I said, let it just be said. We don't hate George Floyd. None of us do.
No.
All of us agree that the way he died was unfortunate. The truth of the matter is, we live in an imperfect world with a lot of people that were gifted the very same thing, the most sacred thing that God gave everybody, and that's free will. And some people are sadly using that for whatever reasons and whatever things that they feel like it's being best for. But to be honest, some people just abuse it. But You know, I mean, when we say all lives matter, especially me, coming from an athletic standpoint, I've been around all over the place, seen a lot of people, been to a lot of different countries and whatnot. I say all life matters from the stance that if I were to see any injustice happen to any race, I'd react the same. I wouldn't burn my backyard down, you know, but you know, the way you overcome racism is literally is through love. But you know, like everyone is just like, we have to accept everyone, but the world's way of accepting everyone is just letting them do whatever they want, even if it's destroying them. You know, I was like, love is telling people in a respectful way what they need to hear, not so much what they want to hear. There's a verse in Proverbs that says, wounds from a friend heal, but an enemy multiplies kisses. AKA, if you get hurt from hearing something from someone that cares about you, you'll get over it eventually. Right. You know, you'll hear from it, but your enemies will always kiss up to you and tell you what you want to hear, even if it means watching you destroy yourself.
Come on.
Now we can get into sports.
I had to get this off. Okay. So, man, Anthony, thank you for saying that, bro. That's good. And it does bring perspective. It does. It brings perspective because it is so easy. Like, obviously, we know, I mean, well, I now know the entire, thank you to Shekinah, knew what happened before what we saw with the edits and the short clip of George Floyd being on the ground, which is a horrible situation. It was honestly one of the toughest videos I've ever had to watch. It's not like, and I will say conservatives sometimes, I think our weakness, we can be so quick to be like, boom, hit them with facts without actually getting into the feels a little bit. I think it's actually healthy because it brings sympathy, compassion, empathy. And so I think it is important to, you know, because I mean, obviously I think who I feel bad for the most is the Floyd family, what they've had to go through from this entire process. Like, I cannot imagine that, you know, being the mother or the father of George Floyd and have to go through this entire thing. And then on top of that, feel that the backlash from what happened over the next year with the riots and the looting and the burning down of cities. It's like, oh my gosh, you have to relive this experience every single night for years.
Well, I think that's important, and I think that Kongman hit on that earlier. Is that the only way you're going to solve any of this is through Jesus. But Jesus isn't, you know, a lot of people treat him like a bellhop. You know, they only call him when they want delivery service or like fast wishes granted and stuff, when they don't realize it's a relationship. It's something that you got to go through on a daily basis. And when you go through that on a daily basis, you see him start to change you. See, everyone's trying to change the world out there. But the only way that you can really change that is by changing the hardest place ever, and that's here. And you can't do that on your own strength. We all have insecurities that we all still fight and battle with on a daily basis that we can't get past. Yeah. You know, it takes grace to get past that, you know, which is why when there's an offense done to us, you know, as Christians, God says, you know, like, forgive without a limit. Someone says they're sorry, just keep giving that. And I feel, you know, like, you know, sometimes we tend to just be like quick to be like, well, this, because we've already taken time to process it, you know. But what I do know is that sadly, the truth of the matter is that as long as people are bent to doing what they want to do, George Floyd will just be another name on a long list of people that died the same way. You know, there's forever going to be people that might die at the hands of police in the future. But the question for us and the future generations coming up after us is just like, we don't want the whole country to go up in flames every time something, you know, goes wrong. We want to be able to have conversations to figure it out. And, you know, like Black Lives Matter hasn't done anything to actually benefit that. And this is going into sports as well, because I look at all these athletes, you know, that I've competed with that I have a strong respect for, white, black, you know, Asian, Hispanic, you know, European, that kind of thing. But I look at all these professional athletes, the ones that live here in the US, make their millions of dollars, that kind of thing, and then scream about systemic racism, but then they don't do anything about it. Yeah. You know, you have a lot of athletes that now, like LeBron James and all these other people, that it's just like they're millionaires. It's like you can scream social injustice until you're blue in the face, which is impossible for a black person.
They would dare talk about China. What's going on? Like,
but it's just like their money and their lifestyle, you know, through their work ethic and whatnot has gotten them to where they are now. But it's just like, you know, I've spent more time in the ghetto and the projects, you know, like nationwide, going around through a program that I'm starting to get off the ground now, where I work with individual athletes or groups of athletes that have strong athletic potential to get them extra tutoring and give them extra training so that they can have a chance at college scholarships. You know, I'm giving back to the community. Black Lives Matter has told the Black community, burn your house, burn your car, burn your backyard, and steal everything else. And it's just like, you know, when the smoke settles, they've got no place to go to, you know, and that's a lie that they've been fed, that the world is somehow against them. All Black athletes, Jackie Robinson, Jesse Owens, you know, like all these major titans of athletics that had the world against them, their stories are so elite and so inspiring because they didn't give up when they had a reason to, and they would have never been faulted for it. It was them standing and withstanding and being diligent and perseverant through all of those hard times, that now, if you're a white person and you get into the NBA, it's because you're 7'5", or you can't miss when you shoot from the three. That kind of thing. You know, it's just like sports have become so African-American dominant, that kind of thing. And it's just like, now it's become a place where instead of turning on a game to have a little escape from work or your politics, now politics has plagued everything. And you can tell that it's all political, because whenever politics gets put someplace, it changes the whole dynamic and it ruins everything, and then it makes an argument. And so I know that you had asked a question about the women's national soccer team. Look, I am a single brother of 3 sisters. And I would never tell my sisters that if they wanted to do something, oh, don't do it because you're a woman and it's going to be harder and all this other stuff. I would never do that. And that's not my stance. I do know that in the realm of athletics, women's sports gets very little viewership. I will say that. So when Megan Rapinoe was just like, oh, well, you know, like I was winning more championships and all this other stuff, and, you know, it's because I'm a woman that I'm not getting paid the same as everybody else is, and yada, yada. And I'm just like, and everyone's like, that is so true. It's just like, she needs to get paid more. The women's national soccer team has won 4 titles. It's like, yeah, they've won 4 titles, but it's like, you know, they're a dominant team. But I'm just like, the Women's World Cup is once every 4 years. So I'm just like, what team does Megan Rapinoe play for when she's, you know, not here? And I got a deep respect for Megan Rapinoe. I know I have got a very good personal close friend that works closely with her as a director, you know, that kind of thing, you know. But it's just like, as far as her argument goes, nobody's looking at her sideways because she's a girl. Nobody thinks any less of her because, you know, like she's a woman. It's just like, you know, at the end of the day, when you sign a dotted line contract as an athlete, you're in a business. And it's just like, if your business ain't generating money here, they don't have much to offer you, because if they pay you more than they're getting in, you're either going to bankrupt the franchise or you're going to lose all your athletes. So there has to be a compromise here. But I mean, like, Megan Rapinoe, sponsored by Nike. She's got Gatorade on her side. She's got all these other endorsements that make up for what other athletes, some male athletes, most MLS people in the United States playing pro soccer as males don't have. You know, she's made a big name for herself. And I feel like falling behind the I'm a woman and I'm helpless and I'm desperate, it's just like, you know, it's a controversial statement that I make, but I'm just like, you're kind of proving everybody's point, that it's just like, you want to compete with the men, but then like when you don't get paid the same as the men, but then you can't do everything that the men do. I was like, and then in sports, it's getting paid your work ethic and like how, and based on your performance. But it's just like, you know, her club team hasn't won any championships, you know, like, and on top of that, the girl doesn't even like sing for the national anthem, you know. I'm an Olympian. When I sat down, in the most important conversation that I had with my coaches and everybody else, when I was talking with them, they were just like, look, when you're here, no political slogans, you know, like no statements being made. You are not Anthony Watson now that you're here. It's like, you represent Jamaica as the country. And it's very selfish of you to use this platform to now speak for every single one of those people that isn't here to represent themselves. And that's how I view it. So when I see people kneeling for the anthem, it's heartbreaking, you know, because it's just like, you have other people that are literally dying trying to get here. Not to mention the people that died to give you the benefit to actually make your millions of dollars doing, you know, like playing a game once a week, you know? And
Dang.
so being an athlete teaches you a lot of things. It teaches you hard work, it teaches you discipline, it teaches you work ethic, and it builds your character. But, you know, you look at the character of a lot of these people because you see a lot of these black athletes that are in so many sexual allegation charges, so many domestic violence cases because they don't develop. They're strung out on weed all the time,
Yep.
you know, and they rely simply on their athletic ability. But as an athlete, I know, and what most athletes fail to take into consideration when they first take the path of athleticism is that you're not going to be an athlete forever. You know, like one bad injury, your career is over. You know, like you're not going to be in your prime for forever. So it's a short-lived career that you have only a small window to make as much influence as you can and as much impact as you can to kind of help your life after it, you know? And I feel like more athletes need to be investing into people to build up the sport rather than tearing it apart by making it all about now like social justice and all this other stuff. Cause I'm just like, look, everybody wants everyone to be treated equal, but you can't do it from a platform in a place where you now make everything about race and color, you know? And it's just like the one thing that cured my mindset on group mentality was I read it's a very hard book to read. It's about, I think it's an 8-page manifesto, and it's called The Making of a Slave. And it was written by William Lynch, the guy that you get the term lynching from.
Wow.
So you listen to it, and like I pulled up a little bit right here. He says, gentlemen, this is just a small paragraph. He says, gentlemen, you know what your problems are. I don't need to elaborate. I'm not here to blow up your problems. I'm here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag, I have a foolproof method for controlling black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for hundreds, if not thousands of years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences amongst the slaves and make the differences bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control. And this is back in the 1800s. He says, these methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work through the South. Take this simple list of differences and make them about this. On the top of my list is age, but it's only there because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. Then there's intelligence, size, sex, size of the plantation and status of the plantations, attitudes of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley, on a hill, east, west, north, and south, have fine hair, coarse hair, are tall or short. He said, now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust and envy, and stronger than adulation and respect or admiration. The black slaves, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pit the old black male versus the young black male. The young black male versus the old black male. You must use the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves, the light-skinned slaves versus the dark-skins. You must use the female versus the male and the male versus the female. And you must also have all your white servants and overseers distrust all blacks. It is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. He said, gentlemen, these kits are your keys to control. Use them, have your wives and children use them, never miss an opportunity. If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful of each other and us.
Oh my gosh.
That's so crazy. I feel like you're reading what's happening today.
And you see what's happening within the black community itself. There's so much distrust amongst black people that if one black person's doing better, it's automatically for the white man.
Yep.
And then they're only for you if they're worse than you, you know? And so that's why, and then later on when you read that, he has physical tactics. So he said, take the strongest, most able-bodied Negro, tie him to two ends of a horse and beat the horses till you rip him apart in front of the women, the children, and the other Negroes. Then he says, take the men and bullwhip them within an inch of their life. Do not kill them, but put the fear of God in them. He said, this way they will be physically fit to do the job, but intellectually dumb to question anything that you say. And this serves two purposes. because it'll make the Negro rely on the master and will make him inadequate to lead and support a wife and child. It'll make the wife and child dependent on the master and the husband incapable of providing a family for them. Baby mamas, you know?
Wow.
Wow.
Bro, I'm in shock.
That's where the original F-boy started.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
And so that's why when you see young Black athletes today can't string a sentence together, don't know how to talk properly, but they're getting paid millions of dollars through their athleticism, but they don't really know. Mike Tyson is a perfect example. Insane freak athlete. Every single person that stood across the ring from him, you know, was just hoping that they didn't get knocked out, but that didn't really stop him, that kind of thing. But when you heard Mike Tyson talk, didn't really sound educated. And then Don King, his manager, whenever he would have a fight contract for like $50 million, Don King would sign his son, his daughter, his agency, and then Mike Tyson, after winning a $50 million fight, would only leave with about $3 million because he couldn't read a contract or understand it. Take the mind, enable the body. And it's now time, me, in my life, I try to be as informed from both sides, because you can't make an argument until you understand where the other person's coming from. And a lot of people look at me like an athlete, a Black athlete, and they're just like, oh, well, you're just some dumb jock. You don't really understand my woes and my problems. And just because racism isn't happening to you, you know, like, doesn't mean that it's not happening everywhere. And I'm just like, you don't know the racism that I've gone through. You don't know the times that I've been beat up, you know, like slandered and like persecuted just because I look different, that kind of thing, without even having the chance to sit down and talk to somebody. You know, you can't speak for me. But you already debunked your conversation by telling me that, because if you're saying and admitting that I haven't experienced it, then that means everywhere I've been, I'm not going through it, which means that it's not that way everywhere, you know? And so I use my platform as someone who came from nothing, had absolutely nothing but a dream in his heart and the prayer and support of loving parents and a good family that got me to now be able to sit here as an Olympian. But like I said, I know at the end of the day, I'm not going to be an athlete forever. So now that I have this platform, the question for myself and that I ask everybody else is just like, what do your values, how much do they mean to you? Because when I came out as conservative, I lost all of my sponsors.
Wow.
You know,
Really?
I lost, in a week, I lost every single sponsor that was helping me pay for training, every single sponsor that was helping me pay bills, every single sponsor that was like helping me pay for rent and everything else, to the point where I was like living in my car for a couple of days. You know, I've been stranded overseas when you know, my funding has run out. I've gone weeks without eating on the road because I had no funding. As Olympians, we don't get paid. We get everything through donations, crowdfunding, and sponsorships. And when you don't have the money, you don't compete. And it's been an ongoing thing that I've had to battle with year after year after year. But the beautiful thing in that was when I had nothing and I really relied on my faith, you know, like, and I really let God take the reins. It was difficult. It was hard. There were times that I wanted to give up, but it's just like in the very last moments when I really decided to let go of my feelings and to be like, okay, God, I can't do anything at this point. So you have to come through for me. He did. And that gives me the testimony that I have now, that God works. You know, it's not just a myth. It's not just something that you say here. It's not man versus women. It's not white versus black. You know, it's sin versus, you know, like salvation is really what it is, which is why when anyone, you don't even need to start saying the things that you disagree with or don't like. The minute anyone hears Christian, it automatically triggers what's wrong with them in their heart, that now they start to lash out at you as judgmental, imperfect, and everything else. And then they just put up a wall, you know, but, you know, at the end of the day, all you can do is live your life. And there are two things. These are the only two things in your life that you have absolutely 100% control over. That is what you say and how you respond to what's said to you. Outside of those two things, you can't control your thoughts. You can't control how people respond to you. You can't control people's reactions to how you live. So if you know from now on that you can't control that, why let it bother you? You know?
So good. I thought it'd take a moment after Anthony just dropped bombs. I never, well, dude, I can't, like, your testimony right there is like living proof that when they say that conservatives don't go through cancel culture, like, you literally lost your sponsorships did you what how did you lose it? Did you just post some stuff on Instagram?
Well, I don't know who's watching this live, but no, it was when I went to the SAS event. I just posted that I was at SAS, you know, because like I kept everything like, bro, like I had my beliefs and whatnot, but then like when people saw me at like a conservative event and whatnot, and that I was a Turning Point ambassador, within a week, I had 6 major sponsors and I think 4 personal sponsors, and then I was literally left with just 2. So I had I still have a sponsor that'll send me meat every month, and then another sponsor that kind of helps me with clothes from time to time. So I mean, like my social media is basically how I fed and clothed myself through COVID, you know, in the past couple of months and stuff. And you know, like but yeah, it was heartbreaking, you know, because I was just like, I got emails being like, you know, due to your outspoken beliefs, and I was just like, outspoken. I was like, I thought I was kind of flying under the radar, but everyone kind of knew what I was doing. And then other ones were just like, due to your dangerous ideologies, you know, like we think it's best that we terminate and just like cut ties. And then the worst part was the money that they had already donated to me, I had to give back. So that put me further in a hole. So I was literally left with absolutely nothing. So I set up another GoFundMe, that kind of thing. It's doing all right, you know, but I mean, like,
hold on. So where is the GoFundMe in your link?
Yeah, it's a link in my bio.
All right, so everybody, go support my man. This dude he's put in the work. He's a conservative, and you know, this is like for real. Like this is where we put, you put your money where your mouth is. And so if we say, hey, we want to support our own, like this is how we do it. We got a conservative athlete that's on the front lines. He loves Jesus. He's standing up for conservative values. He's speaking out. He's not giving into cancel culture. He's uncancelable now. He is out there. Go to his link after this Instagram live. Click on the link and support Anthony, because he's doing it, and he's being a voice.
Hey man, I made it to the Olympics broke, homeless, and starving. So I tell everybody, it's just like, I'm a good investment, because if I have the support that I need, I want to go and I want to win.
That's right. Come on.
I don't want to participate anymore. It's just like we gotta represent.
That's right, bro. Oh my gosh, I love that, man. Well, dude, that's great. Well, I mean, I don't know about you guys. I mean, I think we went an hour and a half. I want to have you guys back for real. Like this.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Yes, so fun.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Are you guys on Clubhouse?
Yeah.
I am, but I hate that app.
I'm not yet. I just heard about it the other day, and I think I got to get on it. I'm like, man, there are so many things. Like, look, I train for 8 hours a day. You know, I train from 4:30 in the morning. Well, not right now because I have a little hamstring injury, until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. That kind of thing. That's weightlifting, that's sprinting, and then that's like physical therapy, all in like one thing, just so that I can push myself hard. So it's just like everyone's like, TikTok came out, and I was like, I'm like so late. I just got a TikTok.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to like use it. I feel old, but it's just like I've been so like lost. And then everyone was on Telegram, then everyone was on Parler, then everyone now is on Clubhouse. And I'm like, if they come out with one more thing, I'm gonna blow my phone up.
Yeah, I mean, Clubhouse is. I like the concept of it. I mean, it is like completely. There's not too many conservative clubs on there. And it's easy, but I will say that, you know, and I just started a club, just Speak Truth Without Fear. I would love to get you guys in on it, because I think when we have these type of convos, it's the one thing I do love about Clubhouse is that people can ask questions, and we can actually have a dialogue with the people. Like, for instance, we've had about 170 people on average here, 130 to 170 people listening. And if they got questions, then we actually can bring them up on stage. They can talk for a minute, ask a couple questions, and then we can answer them, and then we put them back in the audience, so that you don't, in case you get trolls or whatever. And so I think I would love to maybe sometime next week, if you guys got time, maybe we kind of further this conversation on everything that we talked about, take it on Clubhouse. We'll invite everyone that was, you know, obviously we'll make an announcement on our social medias and take this conversation to Clubhouse, so that we can actually have a dialogue with other people and hear their experiences, because I'm sure we're gonna grow, and on top of that, I think you guys would crush it. So, and I've just had a blast talking with you guys. So, I think,
dude, this was so awesome. So it was nice to meet all of you, Kong man, and she kind of, you know, I just want to tell you guys, you know, keep fighting. I'm encouraged and motivated by all of you. You know, it's always extra motivating when you get to be around people that think the same way you do, so that you don't have to there's like a relief when like you hear something and you don't even have to explain. It's just like, oh, finally someone that I don't got to explain myself to. And my encouragement to you all is that doing what's right is a very lonely road, and there are a lot of more lonely days to come, because truth has never been accepted, it's never been common, and it's never been popular. And you know, when you can learn to be confident in who God made you to be, not the world, and who God made you to be, that's how you get over all the negative comments, all the DMs, all the death threats and everything else. You see past all of that. And I asked myself a long time ago, I said, God, why was Jesus never afraid? Because he went everywhere. And then as quickly as I answered that asked that question, God said Jesus knew who he was, he knew what he came to do, and he knew where he was going. Those three things. Now, when you know who you are, what you came to do, and where you're headed, people are going to throw obstacles in your way, but God's going to give you the strength to jump over and dodge and duck and do all of that around every single one of them. And so I think we should end with prayer.
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on, bro. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. We will. That is why we have to do this more. And that's why we're doing this for the whole month of April. And I, you know, not to like put a plug in, but we are doing this Sunday through Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern time every night, Sunday through Thursday for the whole month of April. And the reason why is because honestly, I felt like I needed this. This is life-giving for me when I can actually talk to other people face to face, hear what you guys are going through. Like, dude, I had no idea that you lost your sponsorships. Like that, and that it shows that we're all in this fight together, and it's life-giving that we can actually be able to. It's iron sharpens iron, and this is what we're doing. And honestly, it gives hope and inspires people to have the same courage to speak out in their own communities, because that's really at the end of the day we want to impact the people that are listening. Like, hey, listen, we're going through it. Like, it's not just you guys. Like, we're all going through the same exact fight together. We're all having the same conversations. And if these conversations can carry on to 150 to 200 more people in other communities to have those exact same conversations, that's where we actually bring change. We change the country from within, not from without. Before we end with prayer, Shekinah, Kongman, you guys have any final thoughts, final statements?
Ladies first.
Well, I think it's so important to pray for this nation and pray for the American people and pray for Christians to stay super bold. I really think that it's time for Christians to really stand up and be bold during this time, because the enemy is coming in every single direction. And I think we've seen that even through the Biden administration. They're coming in every single direction. They're coming for our kids. They're coming for our faith. They're coming for our family. They're coming for our rights. They're coming for everything. And I think that the reality is that persecution is what Christians have to go through. And it talks about that a lot in the Bible. Those who truly follow Christ will be persecuted. And I also think that we're meant to be blessed. And so I just think that that's going to be a huge factor in all of our lives, is just staying true and being bold in Christ, because that's what we're called to do. And I truly believe that we're living in Revelation. We're living in the end times. So these moments of being bold as Christ followers, I think is going to be really, really, really important, especially in these next 4 years.
So good.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm just gonna say, I think it was John Wesley who said this. He said, like, every time I'm not going through some hardship, I repent, because that means I'm probably not doing something right. And so, you know, Jesus promises persecution, like Shekinah said. And if you're not getting backlash, you're probably not standing up for anything. And you're probably exactly where the enemy wants you. Because the enemy's scared. The enemy doesn't like when we speak truth. The enemy doesn't like when we go out in boldness and fight against, right? Paul talks about this. I forgot which verse, but he says, we don't fight against flesh and blood, but rulers, principalities, and a spirit of darkness, right? So it's like we are fighting a spiritual war. We're not fighting a political war. And I think a lot of Christian conservatives need to get this right. We're not fighting a political war. We're fighting a spiritual war. That's why they're going for our families. That's why they're going and attacking our faith. They're completely destroying and trying to dismantle the designs that God has set for us as people, as his children, has people made as image bearers of Christ. This is Imago Dei, right? We bear the image of God, and God has designed a specific thing for us. But then it's right now what's going on. The left is trying to tear that apart. It's a spiritual war. It's not a political war. So I just want to encourage everyone, like if you're not getting backlash for anything, you're probably exactly where the enemy wants you. And I think we have to be more bold, because the more that we disengage, the more that we just like, oh, but I'm called to be, apolitical. Jesus wasn't part of a political party. I don't care. When literally slaughtering, mutilating of babies becomes political, you got to be political. I'm sorry. There's no way around it. So I want to encourage you guys to be bold, though, because Jesus, the number one commandment that God says in the entirety of the Bible, number one thing says, do not fear. Do not fear. Do not fear. Do not fear. Joshua 1:9 says, do not fear, I'm with you, be courageous and all that stuff. So I just want to encourage everyone with that, because he is with you. And even in Matthew 28, when he says the Great Commission, he's like, I'll always be with you till the end of the age. But also, just because you get backlash is not a sign that you're living a godly life. And what I mean by that is, like, sometimes you're just a dick. And sometimes you're just a mean person, and people are saying, hey, that's not okay. Like, for example, I've been seeing a lot of stuff with conservatives. This really, really disheartens me when they say Black culture is disgusting, animalist. I'm like, whoa. Like, I think we need to talk about the inner city culture of our cities, and happens to be a lot of, like, a majority Black for sure. But Black culture is not crime. It's not drugs, not poverty. Black culture is family. Black churches, gospel music, jazz music.
That's the real.
These are Black culture. This is Black culture. Stop trying to tear down a whole group of people and lift up. And this is where it's like, when conservatives go like, yeah, Black culture is animalistic. I'm like, no. And you should get backlash because you're just being a dick. So
Yep.
That's also another caveat. So I think one thing that we're really missing in today's society is wisdom, and that only comes from God, right? So that's just my encouragement to you guys. Don't be scared. Speak the truth in love. Be gentle, but also don't be afraid to speak the truth, because Jesus, he says some sharp things and very offensive things, like called the Pharisees brood of vipers, and told people to tie a stone around their neck and drown if they cause children to stumble. Jesus said this. So I think we have to be bold, but also be discerning and have wisdom. Speak the truth in love. Be gentle when we need to, but also be firm and not bow down when we need to. So that's my encouragement.
Speak truth without fear. That's why. That's the premise. Anthony, can you end us with prayer?
It would be my pleasure, my friend.
Oh, baby.
That's my favorite pastime. Well, there you go. Jesus, we thank you so much for this day, because it's another day that you have given us to experience you in a new way that we've never seen you before. So, Jesus, I pray over my friends. I pray over Shekinah. I pray over Kangman. I pray over Jordan, God, that you would continue to protect them. You'd guide them. For everyone that tuned in, everyone that was watching, God, everyone that needed to be filled with a little bit of hope. I pray over every heart that's feeling a little bit desperate. I pray over every spirit that's feeling a little crushed. I pray over every mind that's feeling a little hopeless or lost. God, I pray over every soul, God, that is questioning and feeling a little confused, God, that your peace, the peace that we can't explain, the peace that has no address, no expiration date, no cap, no limit, God, is just immerses us in it, God. I pray that that would rest on them right now so that they can experience the love that you want to give them. And God, I pray over our country. God, we ask that you would have your way in the White House. We pray over our president, because you tell us to pray for our leaders. It's not an easy thing to do when we don't really agree with them, but you tell us to do that anyway. So we ask, God, that you would help Joe Biden to get his mind right. Because seeing an old man literally stumble like that is kind of upsetting, that people are literally abusing an elderly person like that. So I pray over him, God, that you would give him wisdom, that you would show up and intervene on his behalf, that you would be God for the people that we don't want you to be God to, because that used to be us before we found you. And so, God, I pray that you would continue to touch and bless these things, and that, God, as we continue to put you first in our hearts, then we would continue to put you first in our jobs, continue to put you first in our friendships, continue to put you first in our relationships, in our homes. in our schools and the places that we walk, that we would know that everywhere we walk, as long as we're walking with you, we're already walking in victory. Nothing can happen to us. And if anything does happen to us, God, we rejoice because of what is going on and what we have waiting for us. We don't walk around in fear because you tell us not to be afraid. You say true love casts out all fear. So I pray, God, that you would instill a deeper passion for the love of your name. And as we continue to put you first in everything with the absolute unadulterated love for you, Jesus, that you would start to take away all of the fears that are holding us back from loving you wholeheartedly. And that as we continue to do that individually, that you would help us to do that collectively, and that we would go from the United States of America back to one nation under God. This is your world. We're your people, and we're just living in it. And I pray, God, that you would rest on the houses of everyone that is needing you today, and that you would show up in ways that brings glory to your name to bring us back to where we need to be, which is at your feet. And we thank you for this time in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Dude, such a good prayer. Everybody, thank you everyone for being on here. Seriously.
So good.
I love you guys.
Yeah.
All right.
Again
So
soon.
yeah, we're gonna do this again. I want to get you guys on one more time in the month of April, please, if you guys have the time, because this
One more time, break time. Gonna celebrate all day. Oh, yeah, you didn't think I could do that, did you, George? When you gonna give me my 16, bro? I got bars, baby.
we still gotta do a song together.
We still do.
I know. We gotta get that going.
Simon, don't you think you're out of here, man? We gotta collaborate, bro. It's kind of
Dude.
collaborate.
Let's do it.
Glory.
All right, so for everyone, we're gonna wrap this up, and then again tomorrow night we are doing a special because I know it's Sunday through Thursday, but we added one more night tomorrow. Mir Odom.
Woo! Prager you.
I love Amir.
Yes,
Amir's great.
Alice Inferno is gonna be on tomorrow night. It's gonna be incredible. We're gonna do it 9 o'clock again, 6 p.m. Pacific. It's gonna be incredible, and then we're gonna kick it on.